Radio show with your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvid every Saturday noon to 1. Of course, in the summer where we're sponsoring the White Sox are sponsoring us. Either way, they have the afternoon games on Saturday, so we go a little later, fill in some of that air time. And you could listening to us on WRMN 1410 AM, the Fox River Valley Media Network. We're streaming on WRMN1410.com. Call us in at 847-931-1410. You could text 505-926-1410, or you can hit us up in the comments on the YouTube Live channel, WRM 1410. And if you missed any of our shows, they're all on the Chief Guard of the Republic YouTube channel. Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. A little tired. But it's because I was working on a car, and I got really... You have like every tool in the world, and then you get to a part, and it's like, oh, it needs this special tool, and I'm like, I'm like, it doesn't need it, but they put it there to keep you from doing stuff. So I had to order the part, and then I was 2 days, fixing this car.
Yeah.
So one of the things, I guess it's yes, last week one of the guys asked on the chat, the YouTube chat, why we weren't going after that certain person that owned the island in the American Virgin Islands, a small island, American Virgin Islands, which comes under U.S. jurisdiction. I looked that one up, the Little St. James Island, and it also falls under the jurisdiction of the local governing authorities of the American Virgin Islands. Now, they're not a state, they're a protectorate of the United States, they're a territory, an unincorporated territory, but they have their own local laws. Now, Paul, how many times as a prosecutor or, with the Attorney General's office, were you given a case that was so old, it was on the edge of the statute of limitations?
Before I left, I got one like that.
Yeah. I've gotten cases as a detective where there were 3 or 4 detectives' names scratched out, and then I get it, It's like, boom, now you got it, and the case is like 6 months old already, and it's just dying there. And
we used to have a phrase that once your fingerprints are on it, you're done. That means that it's yours, and that you never wanted to get near it. Even first thing that they did, I'd come into work, and there'd always be a file on my chair. First thing I looked at to make sure when the last day I could indict it was, because sometimes they play a game on you. You'd only have like 3 days, and then if you blew the statute of limitations, you were gone.
Yeah, I had a case that was beyond the statute of limitations that they gave it to me like before the statute of limitations ended, but I was on furlough. So you give me a case on furlough, right? It's not my case. It's been dumped from other detectives, right? And they dump it on me, the hot potato, but I'm on furlough, and by the time I get back, it's beyond the statute of limitations. So I was just like, okay, case closed, beyond, can't prosecute due to passing the statute of limitations. And then they're jumping on me. Well, why'd that happen? I'm like, listen, you signed it to me, 3 days before her statute of limitations was up, and I was on furlough. So am I supposed to come in and check my cases and then have you take me off furlough and everything? But that's one of the things where you learn that the system is messed up, and they try to do that things, some things, not just to mess with you, but sometimes phone calls are put in and they say, hey, I don't want you to, what do you say? I don't want this going to the best detective because they might solve it. I might go to prison.
You give it to somebody who'll take a long time with it.
Yeah, a long time with it, or who won't do anything with it, because then the hot potato falls on them. Because there's lazy and incompetence, and I've seen it all over, and I think it's all over the world. And I know a lot of these bosses, you would think that they would want the most competent people of all time, the best than the brightest, and that's what you would want on your team. But these guys keep some of these incompetent or lazy around because just for that purpose. Just for that purpose. When they have something they need to get rid of, they give it to them. They don't bother them about it. They don't give them any crap about it because they know nothing's going to be done on it. You know. Meantime, they're hammering someone that really does work and everything, and then they assign. This is my paranoia coming in, right? And everything I got, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of stuff I got that was kind of trick baggish, especially in the military where they'd really trick bag you. These bosses would try to they'd sharpshoot and trick bag you. And I'm getting to a point here, right? And I got so paranoid that I had to handle like every single case like it was the Lindbergh baby kidnapping, you know? And otherwise it's like, oh, you dropped the ball here, we're gonna, you know, that's the way I thought. And overthinking things, that might be my problem. Now, I'm getting to a point here. So your office gets something, and it's been highly publicized, and you finally get in there and you get access to all the files because you're in charge now. You move into this office, you get access to all these files that your predecessors were even talking about, and you look at them, and it's nothing, or you look at it, and it's a trick bag thing. So what do you do with it? Now you're stuck. Now you're like, you know, you made a lot of noise over this, and then you come in and you realize it's more trouble than everything that it's worth. How do you come back from that? What are your steps now? And what I'm talking about is,
Oh, I know exactly where you're going. The problem is like when you laid a mattress in reverse, you made it to be the be all and end all conspiracy thing. And then you know everybody bought into your belief of that, and then now you're in charge, and then you've looked, and then you realize what you have, and now you can't walk it back. So then you got a problem coming, because that's why we had a thing, and it's because we're lawyers. We really can't talk about anything. We can't say anything. That's why you'll find out they call it a proffer. Whenever the case is first in court, they do a real big thing where they give you total details so that it's now in court, and then you can then say, well, you could relate back to our proffer, because we can't say anything. Otherwise, it could jeopardize the case, or it could get us disciplined or disbarred. So that's why when you see when they make the first arraignment, there's this real big dog and pony show. The lawyer for the state comes up and he says, you know, so and so got up in the morning at 5 a.m. and you know he burglarized this place, and then he went home and beat his dog, and then he went and he kicked his ma, and then he went to school and he stole an apple, and then you know then he went and then he shot the old lady at 4:15 coming home from school. So they do all that, so they give you all the facts at one time, that and then you can just rest on that. You don't say anything. I can't say anything, then I refer you to what was said in court. So this is kind of like that, but in the public, and you can't walk it back. That's why you always want to keep the pertinent facts to yourself.
all right. So yeah, we have that, especially in the military, and that's been violated. And a lot of people should have been prosecuted, and they haven't been prosecuted. And I for one am really waiting for that. It's called a non-disclosure statement. We sign non-disclosure statements, and the violation of which is 10 years in prison and $10,000 fine. You know, it's a federal non-disclosure statement. We have a security clearance. We're read on for the information, and we're told you better keep your mouth shut. And they try to they do prosecute a lot of people, but certain people make themselves the darlings of the press or whatever, and they feel they're protected. But we're going into. Do you know what a glitter fart bomb is? Excuse the word. Excuse the word fart. All right. Can I say that on the radio?
Yes.
Sure.
I guess so. But excuse. You know what a glitter fart bomb is?
Something that really makes a lot of show and noise, but means nothing and smells.
Well, okay. So you know what porch pirates are.
Yes.
All right. So what some of these guys do is, and I'm sorry if I'm giving away the secret, but I don't think a lot of porch pirates are listening to my show. They may be bored on a Saturday. I hope they are, right? More listeners, God bless them. And this is for their own protection, right? They go looking for UPS packages, especially Amazon packages that people leave on their porches. And normally the people are at work and the Amazon package gets dropped off, and then they walk by and grab it. And they keep it like it's theirs. Because they're not really stealing from the U.S. mails. They're stealing from Amazon, leaving it on your front porch. All right, so some guys, they order a lot of stuff from Amazon and got tired of being victimized. So what they did is they built a really nice looking Amazon package, something that looks like it's got something really valuable in it, just the right size, And then they loaded it with glitter, condensed. I think that they used a fan, all right, a high speed fan, battery powered fan, and then they added in this like skunk juice, real bad smelling juice, and so these guys would come by and they would grab these packages, and then they'd be like a mile down the street in their car, or they'd go home with them, and boom, the thing would open up and splattered all this glitter all over the place, right? And this skunk juice all over everything. So if it's inside your car, it's going to take a couple detailing jobs just to get that right, So you're in competition with people to get elected, to stay in power at the top level. And your party's been associated with other certain people, but you let that happen because now you're going to use it. What is it that Rahm Emanuel said?
Don't let a good crisis go to waste.
That's right. Don't let a good crisis go to waste. That's a thinker there. So your party's involved in everything, and that a lot of people get named or prosecuted or maybe whatever. So you create this idea of there's an actual list of names. There's an actual detailed list of names, right? If you were an intelligence operative, would you keep a written list of names?
In one place? No.
Anywhere.
No, I don't mean together. No, but I might have their name in a report relating to something else.
Yeah, but you're not the guy. You're not the guy writing the reports. You're just the guy collecting the information. You have a handler above you, all right? And you tell him everything verbally, or at the worst through a dead drop. All right. Maybe you ever hear of a microdot? Maybe you're using microdot. Maybe you're using an internet plant. There's all sorts of ways to do a dead drop of information. But once I give that information to my handler, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want any of that evidence. All it was verbal, right? Unless they got me on tape, audio tape and everything, and they could prove that's me beyond the shadow of a doubt, right? They're not going to have anything. That's what the guy with I've got the lowest level of training you could probably get, right? And I know that, all right? But if you create this story, this fictional story, that there is such a list, some sort of list of guilty people, but you make a list of guilty people, but you add innocent people onto that list. Just random innocent people. innocent people, even from your own side. That's even better. So you know for a fact that this person is innocent, but you put them on the list anyways. And you have them in a couple places. You have a couple of these people out there. So now you've made this big story about this list that's available, right? And I got this list, and, the FBI's looking, they went through everything, they got this list, and now you come into the office because they left certain things behind, and took certain things with them, but they leave this behind, and you're like, oh, God, here it is. And then you look at it and you go, wait a second. After all this is completely useless because this one thing here, this one name here, we know for a fact, you have to accept it, it's for a fact, we know for a fact that this person isn't involved, but they're on that list. So now, do you publish the list with a redacted name or redacted 2 or 3 names? Would you publish that list, Paul? With redactions on it?
It's possible, but I would tend not to.
Yeah, because
publish
the credibility of everything else gets blown out the window then.
Yeah.
Who are they hiding? Who are they protecting? And you can't give their names. Well, this is the guy we're protecting. You can't do that. So you basically went in and they left a glitter bomb in your office. All right, do you set it off? All right, because if you if you publish the whole list with people that are innocent on it, now you become liable because you knew or should have known. You have the whole power, from Elgin, Illinois, on the Fox River Valley Media Network, streaming on WRMN1410.com. Call us in at 847-931-1410 or text us at 505-926-1410. Or you could just chat with us on the YouTube live channel for WRMN1410.com. You could also pick up these shows later on the Chief Guard of the Republic YouTube channel. You get a link to that on our webpage, cgr.psylink.net. So everyone knows I'm a psyoper. So cgrpsylink.net. There it is. There it is. Nice picture of me and Paul. So, Paul, have you ever been told to stop working a case?
As terms of preventing me from doing something in 35 years, no. But there was a time when I had a boss who was a problem, and I was gonna work a case with the feds, okay? And it was against some political people, okay? And I had worked the case up, and I developed that there was a crime in Cook County and a crime in Springfield, and then there were tax violations and everything. And what my boss did was he ordered me to turn the case over to the feds, okay? And I was going to be added to their prosecution. In fact, the state's attorney at the time said that I was going to be detailed over there. And I then, at their direction, I say, we were closing the case, and we were referring it to the federal U.S. attorney, and later on, I was involved in a problem where I actually was let go, and then they backtracked on that, but I had already gotten another job, and one of the reasons was because they quote said that I violated the statute of limitations when I was directed, and I had memos showing that I was directed to turn the case over, and in fact, the U.S. attorney were going to testify on my behalf that they were told the same thing. So I was never told not to do a case. I was told to turn a case over to the U.S. attorney's office, though.
Okay, so I had one case, and I really wasn't told because I'd solved the case. It was pretty much solved. Accidental overdose stuff. So this kid, he's found dumped in the winter in the middle of a 8-foot fenced-in 8-foot fenced in locked gate, um,
Lot?
vacant lot, like a parking lot, but it was 8-foot fenced in, and he's in the middle of it, and he is lying face up, and he's dead, right? And I had to climb up on a roof to see and estimate maybe the guy got enough air jumping off this roof or whatever, but it hadn't. So I figured that the guy had to go there before it had snowed. They had to dump him there before it snowed because there was no tire tracks or footprints or anything leaving him there. So before it snowed, they dumped him there, and then it snowed, and then the sun came out and maybe melted the snow off of him. That's when they called and they had him moved. So they hadn't had him moved yet. I went out there, the crime lab. I had to call. They have everything. Patrolmen were out there. But one thing I saw was opened up his shirt, and he had lividity on his chest. Right. So he was laying on his back, but all the lividity, and for people not in the know, when you die, your blood starts pumping, and it sinks to the lowest level, and it leaves like what might look like purple bruises. Right. The interesting thing about this lividity was that it looked like he was laying face down on a fancy tile floor. Right. So you can make out the tile, the pattern of the tile, right? It was kind of a fancy, unique tile. It's not something you see anywhere. The tiles themselves had texture to them. So he had overdosed on when they got the drug results back. He died of an overdose. He had speedballed. So he had overdose, lethal amount of heroin and a lethal amount of cocaine in his system at the same time. He was a local guy, and he had just broken up with his girlfriend, but he was known for doing this stuff. So I asked the commander, I says, well, the violent crimes lieutenant and commander, I says, I'd like to work afternoons for a couple days because I want to go to all these bars along in the area, especially on Belmont Avenue, where this guy was found, and I want to check out to see where this tile was, the very specific tile, because obviously someone in there is selling, speedballs, heroin and cocaine, and it's coming out of one of these bars. Oh, no, you're not. You're not doing, and we don't want you going to those bars on daytime on you're working. Now, if you watch the movies and television shows, I like how they make these detectives divorced so they don't have to take care of their kids, or they had the tragic, mysterious death of their wife and kids, or they're just, what do you call it? A dedicated bachelor or bachelorette or whatever. So they don't have a lot going in their life.
Joe Friday and Dirty Harry, exactly.
Yeah, they don't got a lot going in their life.
Right. Yeah.
So they could work off-duty hours, right? And not have to, send the overtime check into the city or anything, right? They could go and do these investigations on their own and all that. And I'm like, once I was told no, once I wasn't getting paid by the man, I'm like, no. And the reason being is because now you're switching from an accidental overdose to homicide, right? Some guy sold him this stuff, drug-induced homicide. Bam. That adds a homicide to the books, right? They don't want a homicide on the books. But maybe I'd save a life, right? And maybe I put some bad guys in prison for selling hot stuff, Nope. You solved it. It's accidental. It's an overdose, which it was originally listed as a homicide because why else would you dump a body in the middle of a gated-in thing? All right. So we got our two senior FBI officials, right? Mr. Cash and Mr. Bongino now. And they came out, there's, I don't know, not privy to any of this stuff. And the little things that I see going around in the press is that there's a little disagreement. There's disagreement going between the Department of Justice and the FBI. And this is what I can understand also. Because now you've looked at this case, 7 years old, at least, if not older, right? And you're an investigator, and you investigate or you have you want to investigate and you have a crew to do this and you say, I can make something of this. I'll find the weakest link, right? I'll investigate them and then I'll do what they do, right? You get the weakest link, you lock them in, you threaten them, you lock them in with the grand jury, then you get the next fish up. And this is intelligence work, right? You get one guy, you interrogate him to get the other guy. You interrogate him to get another guy. And it's a constant flow, right? One or two guys. So now you could work this case and you could start prosecuting these guys and getting it up there and getting the thing. But now you're giving more credibility, you know, to again, well, why are you only picking on one guy? Why not release the list? Because you're common person, not in a bad way, the regular guy on the street, you know, Joe Sixpack. I thought that was funny as heck, right? Like, I'm a Joe Sixpack, but I'm smarter than the guy that called me that, you know, just because I'm not ruthless enough and to have the hubris to be in that position, you know, but there you go. So now they have the ability to do it. They've been, you know, you've been jonesing for it. You know, you've been thinking about that steak dinner, right? For the last 6 months, you've been like, yes, the barbecue's almost ready. Yes, I will go out and I will get the coals. I will go out and get the lighter fluid. I will go out and get the matches. I'll get the steaks and we're going to barbecue and it's going to be the best steak ever. And they said, nope, go eat some hot dogs. It would upset you because, you know, you have that anticipation of all the endorphins or all endorphins. That's another word.
That too. The poor man's endorphins.
Endorphins. You got those all you're anticipating all the great endorphins, right? And you're told no. But you get upset over it, and you're strong-willed people. They're all strong-willed people, right? And I'm strong-willed. I'm really, you know, I would get so ticked off. Oh, man, I would be, you know, they would, the Secret Service would jump me, beat me to the ground. My own Secret Service would jump me, beat me to the ground, drag me out of the office, and told me not to come back for 3 days, right? Till I calmed down. And then I would think about it, and I'd be like, yeah. How do you deal with it? How do you deal with this situation? It's a psyop. How do you deal with it? And then you realize the only way you can deal with it is to ignore it right now. Ignore it. Hopefully it'll go away, right? And take all the evidence you have. And now if you're really thinking, if you really want to think like a psyoper, right? So you want to backdoor this stuff. Right? No pun, you know. So instead of you as the federal authorities do it, right, you get enough credible information, take it down to the local authorities, dump it on them. With all the information you have, give them the file, say, hey, here's the one guy you want, the weakest link. Get this guy. Get him in there. Get him talking. No problem. But then you have to have him like extradited into your state, into the American Virgin Islands. I bet you none of these guys will ever step foot in the American Virgin Islands again. You want to know who's guilty? All these rich guys that will never step foot in the American Virgin Islands. You know, I want to see Bill Gates fly down there. Hello. What? I'm in handcuffs. Yeah, because... What do you think, Paul? You know, if you talk, you know, it's one thing. I've had cases that I've worked up, right? And then the feds have taken them from me because it's all worked up. I got a whole file on it. I stayed awake for 72 hours doing all the work, getting all the witnesses lined up, left, right, you know, getting all their statements with the state's attorney there, getting it all written down. Not quite locked into the grand jury yet, but getting everything written down, getting felony charges approved. And then getting the guy charged, and then it's superseded by federal indictment. For the same thing. Why can't it work in the reverse?
Well, it can. the feds won't do a case. They call it petit abate if the state is working it too. We talked about this in one of our earlier
Yes.
shows. They won't do the case, but there's nothing that prevents the state from also doing the case,
D-
or in this case, the regional territory.
yes. So we're, I think I'm beating a dead horse. And to like summarize this, I think it's a booby trap. I think it was a psyop, right? I think that the people that just got in were looking for a steak dinner, and rightfully so. And even knowing that the so-called list, right, was a booby trap, they said, no, listen, we have enough here. We can work it and we could do exactly what I said. Well, how do you eat an elephant? Like one bite at a time, right? So which bite do you want to take first? The most tender, easiest bite. I don't want to bite on an elephant toenail, right? I want the softest part of that elephant first, right? So you take the weakest link, the easiest one, you go after him, all right? And then like an alligator dragging a deer down to the bottom and let him soak dead underneath, trapped under a log somewhere, all the other parts start getting softer and softer and softer. And you do that until you're out of office. But you still have to, like I said, you had like 300 cases going. I got 6 cases a day just in violent crimes. A lot of ash and trash stuff, a lot of stuff that only required, a check of a computer, a couple phone calls, still that's 6 every day. But, the feds don't get that many, but you still, if you're working on this case, you don't want everything else to go out the window too, because you're hearing about, falsified dossiers, stuff that the federal government did in violation, of all sorts of election campaign laws and everything, all that stuff that they're looking at now. Right? Do you want this to be your main push? I would say no.
No.
I'd say I have to agree. And if you don't agree with me, if you want your pound of flesh, and I want my pound of flesh too, right? If you want to see these hubris, full of themselves, rich people that think they're smarter than you and everything go down, or at least have to defend themselves and spend an ungodly amount of money and then look absolutely terrible to everyone in public, right? Because once you're accused, the public just figures you're guilty, right?
Right.
It's like, why would they accuse them? Why would they say something like that if it wasn't true? I've had that happen to me. Get accused of something that isn't true. And even some of my closest friends were like, hey, why'd you do that? I'd be like, well, close associates. Right? So here's the thing there. I want to see the pound of flesh, but I don't want it to take away from the strength of the country, the strength of the economy, and taking care of. I think one thing that was sorely missing was, again, counterintelligence stuff. The human intelligence operations that were being run by foreign entities in the United States is insane. It's insane. They need to take care of that. That was all an insane operation. That operation has been shut down, except for, remember I said there's the operator, which would have been the guy that owned Little St. James Island for a while, the dead guy, right? And then there's his handlers, right? There's his handlers, the intelligence professionals above him. He's not supposed to keep any written thing. He passes it all on to them. They classify it, keep it, hold it, and use it when they need it. Though there's more of those guys out there. There's a lot of them out there. And they're operating in the United States because we're a free and open society. And they have very little fear of being held accountable or retribution, because they could just flee. If they feel they're being spotted, they could flee to their home country or flee to another country or flee where their operator tells them, and that's it. They're out of reach. But if we never catch them and we never publicize that, then they're just going to come here more. Look at, we had a senator with the Chinese operative driving her everywhere. We had a congressman dating, like having sexual relationships with another Chinese operative. What sort of held accountability did they have?
None.
Zip. None. Nope. Because they were with the right clique at the time. They were with the right clique. If that happened now, I don't think they would be held. I think they would be held accountable. I think it would come out because now they think they're with the right clique, but I'm talking either side. If one side or another's falling for this nonsense, if I had some hot babe come up to me and say, "Hey, handsome, I hear you were in military intelligence, so why don't I buy you a drink?" And I'd be like, "Okay, she's blind." Okay, she's blind, or a clue, right? This is what I would take as a clue. What is she trying to get out of me? And that happens both genders, all right? Not that some guy would come up to me and say, "Hey, handsome." I might think that too. Why does this guy want to get so friendly with me? But both sides are being played because that's the oldest trick in the book. And that's what happened on Little St. James Island. It's the oldest trick in the book. It's the easiest way. People just anticipate the endorphins they get from sexual release, from taboo stuff. Wouldn't it be great if I could do this and get away with it? Thinking about stuff like that and everything. Being put in this situation, it's all right, I hate bringing some humor into it. You remember Cheech and Chong?
Yeah.
Because they were real big when I was a kid. And one of the things is the Basketball Jones song. So you got to look that up on YouTube, the Basketball Jones. And when they're talking to the coach, right? And they go, "Coach, let's talk about your record." And he comes back, "Why'd you have to bring that up?" And they're talking about the record of basketball, right? But he takes it somewhere else because there's always the double entendre, right? But let's talk about your record. He says, "Why'd you bring that up? How's I to know she is 15? She told me she is 13. I was like, and it's hubris. Because these are supposed to be intelligent people, right? Do you think the royalty went to public school?
No.
And if they did, don't you think they'd have private tutors? So they wouldn't, if I was the queen and the prince was getting straight D's, I'd be kind of embarrassed because it's either my DNA or it's my parenting abilities, right? So you send them to the best schools, right? Because he's not going to get a D. He's only going to get straight A's. Not because he earned them or anything, but because you're paying for him to get straight A's, and he's better learn something, right? It's not his fault. It's your fault for not being able to teach him. All right, so no, I got off the subject. Did I know? Yeah, so just with that, they should have known. They should have known better. They should be held accountable. I think history will tell the tale on this one. But I think that our manpower, our treasure, our blood and treasure, our manpower, hours, sweat, and everything should be put in something that's more critical of the defense of the nation. And yes, one thing is prosecuting the people. The other thing is keeping the people. They say drug dealers are a dime a dozen. I want the guy that's supplying the dimes. Right? So when we come back, last quarter of the show, plenty of time for you guys to call in and tell me how absolutely insane I am, and I should put on my tinfoil hat, or to give me a counterweight to what I've been saying. One thing: if a person found out his name was in there, someone leaked it to him, or he's
I
admitting
understand that.
or-
But the other way you would know, though, is if the person were there and he knew he was there.
Yeah. So,
So,
what do you think
so
about?
it could only be those people that could request it, and they're never going to request it because they're not going to want that to come out.
All right. So, what they did with the Russiagate thing was they assigned a special prosecutor, right?
Yeah.
And he was not in any way friendly to the current chief executive officer of the United States. And he rode that puppy for what? How many years?
4 or 5 years.
Yeah, he rode that pony for 4 or 5 years, man. He was beating that pony. And what was his finding?
That they weren't going to prosecute anybody, and that it was phony information. And
There you
didn't
go.
it start with the campaign of another party?
Yes. All right. So now, my understanding is that is the current chief executive officer's belief, that it's the same thing as the Russian gate, right? Now, that kind of people interpret that saying, well, he's on the list or whatever. He says it's a phony list. And like I said, you only need 1 or 2 names. I was discussing this with Matt during the break. And okay, so according to the rumors, all right, some of the Royals are on that list, right? So in thinking like a criminal and wanting to defend myself and wanting to give myself what we all want in is called not probable cause where you have
Plausible deniability.
Probable deniability, like credible deniability. So I bring in one of the Royals that's a little kinkier than normal, and they're doing kinky stuff that shouldn't be done. All right. Next week, I bring in a Royal couple, and we have tea and biscuits and some extremely fine wine and some great seafood, right? And we have nice sunset and everything and a nice dinner party, and then the Royals leave. Both Royals have been to the island. They've been there. One of them's guilty, one of them isn't. But to the average person, they're going to roll those both in together. Now you have a huge liability on your hands. Because if you release the list and you knew or should have known that this person is innocent, all right, you have the whole power. This is where you get known or should have known. Did you not have the entire power of the United States, all in the United States intelligence services and the FBI, law enforcement services, at the time you released the list? Yes. Then why didn't you know this person was innocent? See, that's the trap you get cut into. That's a way. So the only thing that, if you wanted to continue on this, I think you might see there's going to be a hue and cry for this, and especially from one side. Do you think one side is going to everyone on the right thinks that the left has the most people on the list, right? Everyone on the right thinks that. And they're pushing to have the list released because they think everyone on the left is going to suffer for it. But no one's, saying don't release the list on the left, because that's exactly what they want. They want the list released because there's going to be a liability issue. It's going to blow up and everything else. So what you do is you say, here's special prosecutor. Here's all the evidence we have. Here's the grand jury testimony. We are going to give you proper investigative authority as a deputized law enforcement officer for the Department of Justice, acting independently of Department of Justice, your special prosecutor. You go through all this, right? And give it to him. And then do the same.
Let me ask you something, though. See, people make a big deal about this stuff, but let me ask you something. And I go back to one of my favorite films, of A Few Good Men. You know, so this is a protectorate of the United States, right?
It's a territory, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And like, like our base in Gitmo's kind of like similar, right? It's so let me
It's
ask you this.
leased.
Yeah, but it's still my plan is this. So nobody rowed a boat to this island. Okay? Nobody rowed a boat to the island. Okay? They flew there. Okay?
Yes.
So there's got to be plane manifest, whether it's a charter or a corporate plane, right?
Yes.
There's got to be tower logs, whether,
Flight plans.
what plane came in.
Flight plans.
Right. And then there's got to be some type of reception, like for international, like immigration or phone pay. Why don't they just go get a subpoena
Well,
and civilly and hit up the airplane flyer guy, hit up the tower guy, and hit up the customs guy.
all right, so
Why is it that we got to get this list through Pam Bondi or the Justice Department?
well,
Why there's got to be, like right now we're getting information about satellites that are weather satellites that are selling pictures to private things. So we're
yes.
seeing military stuff. Why don't
Well,
if it's this important to everybody, why don't they just go, get the stuff from the thing? And again, like I'm saying, you can ask the government if they have a file on you, okay? And let them ask. But it can only be people that were there. Because, like, I know that I didn't fall asleep last night and Zolar the alien kidnapped me and brought me to the island. I knew I flew on the Rockwell Commander with the A, B, and C company. Okay. So then I would only want to know what my name was on the list. But my friend Tom, who never was on the island, he can't just go and get the information. Okay.
Yeah.
So if it's that important, why don't we have it so that if you were on the island and you want your file, like a normal Freedom of Information request, I want to either FOI it through the government or subpoena it through your own case. If it's that important that to find out who's on the island, you have to have standing. And the person that would have standing would only be somebody on the island.
all right, so
See, that would end this. Because, like my neighbor, say they come from Latvia, they can't get the thing. But like me, if I was on the island, I could then get my records. Okay. And that should be how it is. This fact about everybody needs to know. No, you have to have a reason to know. You can't just say, was Tom Jones that signed the Declaration of Independence on the island? No, it has to be Tom Jones wants to look at his file.
okay, so here's the thing. Flashlights and tracer rounds have two things in common.
They show where you're coming from.
They point in both directions.
Right.
So you're right. If I have standing, if I was, let's say I was one of the royals on the island, just having tea and everything's all innocent, and I'm just I'm rubbing elbows with a guy that everyone seems to like, who's, sociopaths and narcissists are very charming, right? And all right, so I say, hey, I want all the information because I was on the island, right? I want all the information of me on the island, right, did you have? Everything there. Because I'm innocent, right? Well, that doesn't point to innocent. Everyone, the way everyone's looking at it now, all right? I hate this. Perception is reality. Oh, perception is, no, it's not. It's perception, all right? Ask any magician and any Vegas musician, is perception reality? To them, it is. They're selling that, but they know it isn't. They're hiding something, right? So you perceive one thing, they're tricking you on that. Perception is not.
Part of slander, though, is innuendo. And if a news outlet or something is dumb enough to paint you with a broad brush, like you were saying, when you could have just come there for dinner, this is never going to happen because they are, they both in England and here are going to get caught up in that. So that's why I'm saying, all these people that are so concerned about this, okay? If they're so concerned about it, let them come up with a theory, like why I need to know. Maybe that my spouse got a disease and I want to find out if Jeffrey Epstein's responsible. Well, then you have then go get a subpoena, get it from your companies. I mean, these records are out there. They don't fly these planes with, they have to say who's on.
There's no airport on Little St. James Island, but that doesn't prevent them from landing a seaplane anywhere near it. All right.
I understand.
Or to fly somewhere else and then take a boat, a small charter boat or whatever.
Right. But I'm sure that didn't happen. I'm sure these were all, from what I understand, these were all
first class travel. Yeah.
Yeah.
The corporate travel to one island, but then you got to get to the Little St. James Island. Right.
I'm sure.
So that doesn't have an airport on it, and a corporate jet isn't going to land there.
Well, it's still the same theory, though. You got to touch in with the authorities on Little St. James Island to show where you came from.
Well,
so there's got to be.
He was the authority. He owned the island, the whole island.
Yeah, but I mean, the one that you went there to go to Little St. James.
No, absolutely.
Because they're not gonna let Chinese, terrorists go back and forth. I mean, they're gonna know. So I mean, there's other ways of getting this.
Yes, and you know what the main way is? You know what I think the main way is, right? Is they're going after criminality right now. And what do we need for criminality?
You need a victim and a crime.
All right. So if a female 16 years old is a victim of statutory rape, all right, because she can't consent, at least in the state of Illinois. What prevents her from suing somebody, filing a civil suit against the person that she knows raped her?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Let her do that and let her get those records through a proper subpoena.
So why, how long, and I don't understand this because, here we go. Before we're going to, I'm looking forward to, where is it? No, that's not it. That's not it. I lost it. I probably need it. Oh, here it is. The information on this show is for informational purposes and should not be construed as legal advice on any subject matter. The views put forward on this show are the opinions of the hosts, Michael Tooman, Paul Bervin, and their guest callers, and not necessarily those of WRMN 1410 AM. Yeah, you can. Okay, so this went on for years, they say. There's multiple underage children. Dude, if I was a lawyer and I wanted to be rich, right, I would have a private detective that would go out and find these women, and I would file a class action lawsuit against the estate, and then I would name all these girls, whoever they named, I would throw them on the lawsuit too. And then I would have standing for all those girls, right?
That's what should happen.
Yeah, and then you hit them in their pocketbooks, and then all of a sudden, and the other thing I got here, right? These girls, maybe some of them disappeared, but a lot of them seem to have survived. Where are their parents?
Well, Marla and I have talked about this a lot of times. these parents had to know what was going on.
Absolutely.
And that's why you're really not finding this out, because had the parents or whatever not been culpable, there would have been these suits and this information would have come out. But but whoever was devious and planned this knew, like I said, no,
Because they're
one's
intelligence
going
operatives. What do you think they are? Intelligence operatives, intelligence handlers? They're devious.
right.
That's the
exactly right.
you know, they're going to find a way to get in. And again, they're hitting the low hanging fruit, you know.
Right.
We're going to hit him in his testosterone. Oh, well, that always works. You know? So I'm sure something's going to come up next week. I'm sure.
Hey, Mike, the 24th is the 56th anniversary of man walking on the moon, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin.
Well, if you believe
and
that.
I think it's important to recognize that.
You see, that's a thing like gaslighting, and that's what the left is good for. And you see it with the flat earth people and everything else. They love gaslighting this stuff and telling you you're not conservative enough because you believe the earth is round.
Right.
You know? You're not conservative enough because you believe man walked on the moon. You know? And yeah, that was one of the finest times in United States history, And why haven't, you know, we're spending all this money on nonsense when we should be aiming higher, you know? Aim high, Air Force, you know?
Marla and I separately at our houses remember the day my father was cutting shrubs and her parents were outside, and we knew that it was a big event. It was black and white TV, and it was something that'll be remembered for the ages.
It was
we don't
1960
even talk about it anymore.
1969, right?
Yep, July 24th, 1969.
Yeah, I was in the first grade, and we watched it over at Ashburn Lutheran School there in the first grade. What? No, wait. No, I wasn't in summer school. I watched something else in the first grade there.
Saturday.
It was Saturday. Yeah, something else, some other space launch. All right. See you next week. Thank you very much,
Take
Paul.
care. Good
Hi,
show.
Marla.
Bye, Mike.
Have a good week.